You stepped into the world you made, and on the cross of Calvary, you gave your life.
Well, hello, everybody. I was waiting for Pastor Brad. I don't know where he is, so we're going to go ahead and get started without him and hope he comes. No, he is on his way. He's just running a little bit late. But for those of you who don't know me, because I actually don't know all of you out there, so I am Shannon Anderson, and I am the Family Ministries Director here at Liberty Heights. So I oversee birth through college, and I think I have the best job on staff. It's the most fun, that's for sure. So if I haven't met you before, I'd love to meet you after this, if you can hang around and introduce yourself, because I don't know all of you. But so the point tonight is just to share some really exciting ministry wins that we've had over the last 18, 24 months. And then Pastor Brad, when he gets here, can share some vision and some things that we're going to be looking forward to in the future. We should all give Brad a round of applause right now. And we'll end it. But we do appreciate you guys coming out on a school night so late. We tried to pick a time that everybody could come, so I do appreciate that. We'll try to keep it around an hour or less. So we just wanted to really get you guys together and convey our excitement about student ministry, how things have been going for the last 18, 20 months. They have been so phenomenal. I took this role over in March of 2020. So do the math. I took it over right in the middle of a pandemic. Actually, I accepted the role on Monday, and then the world shut down on Thursday. So it was quite the learning curve for me to figure out student ministry. I'd never really been in student ministry before. I had students myself, but had never been on the back side of it. So thankfully, we had some amazing leaders in place that helped me and guide me and show me what I was doing. And we kind of got in our rhythm and a groove, and we have had a really great time in student ministry the last year or so. So a few just like really fun wins that we've had. Since Pastor Brad has been here, I think we're running the most students that we have since he came. And so I know we're not like a big numbers church, but for me, I'm like, if they don't come, then we can't disciple them. And so every student that walks through that door, Mary and I are doing the check-in every week. We like almost want to high-five each other because we're like, there's another student we get to disciple. And so seeing them come back week after week is really exciting. And I can get up here and say that because it really has nothing to do with me. Your students are inviting their friends and just being so welcoming, and the leaders are amazing. They're connecting with the students throughout the week. And so I can get up here and brag on that because it really has zero to do with me. But I had Devin, who is the student ministry assistant. She ran some numbers for me. And so the last week of September through the third week of October, I didn't want to skew it with harvest party numbers. We had 144 unique students come through our doors. So that's 144 if everybody came at once, 144 students that we were able to touch for 4 weeks in October and September. And so that kind of numbers makes us super excited that we're able to disciple those students. We went to camp this past year, and as all of you are aware, we were kind of still in the middle of a pandemic. There were a lot of camps canceling around us, but we were still able to take 70 students to camp. But really, while we had a great time and the kids were discipled and the leaders were great, I actually got to go there for the first time. I went for one day, and I was exhausted. I do not know how the leaders did it for a week, but the students had a great time. But what really got me really excited about that was when we got home, there was a group of students that asked Seth and Mary if they would do a Bible study at their house midweek in the summer. And so I think you had like 2 days notice or 3 days notice, something like that. And they were like, yes, we'll open up our home. And they had a Bible study. All high school was invited. And that first night, there were 25 students that showed up. And I remember Mary texting me and saying, I cannot believe it. They're still walking in the house. Because we didn't promote it as anything fun. It was just a Bible study. And so they showed up. And the next week, Mary texted and she said, there's even more. And the next week, there's even more. And so we were really encouraged by that because it just showed the desire that your students have for wanting to learn more about Jesus, and they were bringing their friends. And then in September, when we switched back to campus, a lot of those guests came with them. So for us, that was a huge win, that the students first wanted to have the Bible study and then came and brought their friends and then are still plugged in student ministry. We have been counseling more students than we ever have in the past, and that's largely due to our team approach. I've been counseling students, Mary's been counseling students, Seth has been counseling students. I know life group leaders have been counseling students. I think Mary even did group counseling for a while. But we also have that new resource of the Biblical Counseling Center. And so when there is a student that needs a little bit more help than what we feel like we're qualified to do, we just send them over to our great Biblical Counseling Center. And I checked with Brad today because I get emails frequently from parents like, we need help, we don't know what to do, here's the problem. And so I'll refer them, but I never know. And Brad said he gets a report, I guess, of just like numbers or whatever. And he said that there are a lot of students that are taking advantage of the Biblical Counseling Center that we have here right on campus. So for us, that's a huge win because it means that we're able to disciple them at a heart level, and we're able to help them with their problems and get their focus back on Jesus. And then we can also partner with the parents at that time and help equip them, give them resources. And so I feel like we are doing that more now than we ever have because there are so many people in our ministry that are taking that leadership role. So that's encouraging to us as well. So just a few things that some of you might care about. Just little wins, I guess. When we first started back to student ministry, it was a rough start because of COVID. We started outside, and then we came inside, and then we had to go back outside, and then we had masks, and then we had to sit 6 feet apart, and all the things. But when it got back to normal, we would feed them pizza, and I noticed that like the big senior boys were having like one piece of pizza. They'd come at like 5:15, right? Like 5:15. And I went over to one of them, and I was like, why? I know you can eat more than one piece of pizza. And they're like, we're just not hungry because it's right out, we eat late lunch after church and whatever. And I was like, well, we'll just flip it. Like it was just kind of a spur of the moment. We were like, we'll just flip it. So the next week we ordered pizza, the same amount, and I think literally we had one piece left. And I was like, whoa, those kids can eat. But a result of that, unintentionally, was by having the food afterwards, they started hanging out. And they started connecting, and the leaders were able to have that downtime after a small group to connect with their students. And so now we do pizza every other week, and then Mary cooks on the opposite weeks, and it's no joke. It's like, fettuccine and nachos and all the fun stuff. But the kids love it, and they hang out, and I think the ones that drive, we have to like literally kick out like at 7:45 or 8 o'clock, and we're old and we're tired and we need to go to bed. So you guys need to leave. But it's been so fun. Your students, I didn't think when I first started this position that I would enjoy students as much as I did kids, because that's all I've done is kids. But it would be a toss-up. Like, I love your students. They are so great. Sometimes Chris is like, I'm sorry you have to go back over there tonight. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It's like my favorite night of the week. They energize me when they come in. Even if they come in crabby and cranky, which is fine because they're teenagers and they're allowed to be like that, we know that when they leave, they're going to have a smile on their face because they are loved and they know they're loved, and they've connected with students. And so that's just for me, just seeing the difference in the 20 months that I have kind of been in this role. That's been a huge shift that I have seen, is the camaraderie and the relationships that have been built among the leaders and the students and the students and the students. And so I just, you guys are here, so you're invested. So I appreciate you guys sending them every week, encouraging them. I know I had teenagers in student ministry, and they didn't always want to come, but you make them. And it's worth it. And so I appreciate your guys' effort, because I've been there, and I know sometimes, some Sunday nights it's harder than others to get your student to student ministry, but it is definitely worth it. I can't remember who I told this today, but our youngest called us on Sunday. She FaceTimed us from her college, and she said, Mom, I went to the Get Connected class at the church that I'm going to, and which was funny that she used like our language. I have no idea if that's what it's called there, but get connected class. And so she signed up to be a small group leader for 7th and 8th grade girls. And I just thought that is what we're striving for every student, that when they leave student ministry, it's their faith, they own it, they embrace it, and they go and serve and love the Lord and teach others how to love Jesus. So I think you guys are doing a great job. I would be remiss if I didn't thank my life group leaders. Several of them are here tonight. Seriously, we could not be where we are without them. I have the easy job. They have the hard job. They're the ones connecting with your students and texting them and calling them and making sure they're okay and checking in on them. And so if your child's life group leader here is tonight, make sure you thank them, because I really think they have the hardest volunteer job in the church for sure. So a couple things, just kind of housekeeping. I have no idea if Chris is still here. Yeah, there he is. So I communicate with you guys like 3 ways, and a lot of times you guys are like, oh, I didn't hear that, I didn't know that. There's 3 ways. I have no idea if it's up there. So you guys should be getting an email from me every Wednesday. I just found out a couple weeks ago one of my leaders never was getting an email, so check your junk. But that's how my main point of communication. Anything that you need to know, and I know you're busy, so I make it brief, I make it to the point, but there's the top 3 things. We also have a Facebook group that I post in regularly. I know not everyone's on Facebook, so it's kind of a repeat of the email. And then we do have a LHC, a student ministry, lhcstudent.com website, and that has everything you ever need to know on it. Any sign up, anything like that. It even has a Google Calendar, so if you subscribe to it, any changes we make on our end, it'll automatically update your Google Calendar, so you have access to any event, anytime, anything, anywhere, all the time, if you subscribe to that. So anyways, I just wanted to get up and share a little bit how encouraged I am about how student ministry has been going, and that's it. So Brad is going to come and share a little bit, and then we'll close it out.
Button. Check. 1, 2. Yeah, good. So if you ever see us, any pastor up there teaching or sharing pulpit or in hearing meetings like that, like checking their phone, it's usually because one of the other pastors is sharing the encouraging messages in the scriptures and prayers and whatnot. Just Chris has sent me some messages here, so to do that. So, well, thanks for inviting me to come and share a little bit tonight about student ministry. So I'm going to kind of recap a talk that I gave related to student ministries, probably been 4, 5, 6 years ago, something like that. So we had a conversation on a student ministry night about the future of student ministry and student ministry challenges and opportunities. And so at that point in time, we said, hey, we feel some fundamental shifts that have to happen in student ministry for student ministry to be effective in the future. And I don't mean just at our church, I mean in the American church as a whole. And so I want to recap a little bit of that philosophy ministry-wise. 1, because some of you weren't a part of that conversation. 2, it's helpful to walk through it again and understand there's a why behind what we're doing and maybe some things we do different than other churches and how we've thought through that just a little bit. So let me talk a little bit about student ministry, philosophy of ministry, and then I'm going to address a couple of the questions that came in. Like a couple of the questions are about hiring a student pastor, someone who's committed for the long haul, those things. So junior high ministry on Sunday morning. So part of my talk tonight about philosophy ministry will cover all of those things in there. So I'll answer those questions in there, and then I'll stick around afterward if you have questions as well. So let me give you just a little quick recap, which whenever a pastor says a quick recap, that's always usually a lie. So let me give you a little quick recap of student ministry as a whole. Student ministry has been around in its current form, the way that it operates now, for about 50 years. It was in the 1970s that churches first started hiring student pastors and developing student ministries. Prior to that, in the 40s and 50s, there were what were known as Youth for Christ crusades. There was a guy who was one of the leading evangelists in that, maybe a guy you've heard of, Billy Graham. And so that was kind of the first focused ministry on students in the 40s and 50s through Youth for Christ crusades. And then in the 70s, that was when churches started developing student ministries. So student ministry as a whole is about 50 years old. Okay? So as a whole, we've got 50 years of data on student ministry. And churches did not hire a student pastor until the 1970s. That was the first churches started hiring student pastors in the 1970s. And so, I've been in ministry for 20 years, so I've not been in ministry for all that time in 20 years. But over the 20 years, I've had lots of student pastors work at the churches I've served at. And some of the trends that started coming out probably about 5 years ago or so, maybe a little longer, they started producing some data, some research on the effectiveness of the student ministry movement over the last 50 years. And some of the data was incredibly concerning and, quite frankly, discouraging. And then I began to take into account my own experience with student ministry and what I'd seen, and both in coming here, what had happened here in the past, what was going on when I got here, previous churches I had served at, just a little bit. So over 50 years of data, here are some of the stats on student ministry. This is after 50 years of research. So, depending on who you read, right now, the average dropout rate of a kid that drops out of church when they leave student ministry is somewhere, depending on who you read, between 70 and 83%. Okay, so about 7 or 8 out of 10 kids who are in a student ministry, when they get to make their own choice about whether or not they're going to church, about 80% of them do not continue forward in a pursuit of Jesus Christ in a relationship through the church in the disciple-making institution of the church. Now, that some of those students are recaptured in a collegiate ministry like Cru or InterVarsity or something like that, and we're grateful to God for those. We support missionaries for that, and that's a strategic time in a student's life to make lots of life-changing decisions. That's a key stage. But when they track the students who had gone through those, only 50%, once they got out of campus ministry, continued being discipled through the local church and connected to any kind of local church. And so the stats on student ministry have been disappointing, to say the least. They've been scary at times. If you're a parent of teenagers, you don't want to hear any of that, right? So I've got a 20-year-old and an 18-year-old and a 14-year-old and a 10-year-old. And so I've had people in student ministry now for several years, and I've got several years to go with kids in the student ministry. So I'm invested in that as a pastor. I'm invested in that as a parent, and those stats have been concerning as they've been coming out over the last several years. Some other research that came out, basically they surveyed students in culture. What they discovered is this: almost every single study out there shows when it comes to moral behavior, there was no discernible difference between secular and Christian students other than one group attended church and one group did not. That's from Barna, that's from Pew Research, that's from reputable research companies when they looked at the lives of students in there. So one writer said this. So this was a guy named Mike Yaconelli. So Mike Yaconelli's with the Lord. In the 70s, Mike Yaconelli was the pioneer of student ministry. He was the leading guru in the 70s and 80s and even later on student ministry as a whole. So if you've ever been involved in student ministries, you've heard of a group out there called Youth Specialties. Mike Yaconelli was the founder and president of Youth Specialties. And so Mike Yaconelli said this. He said, our young people flock to Christian concerts. They cheer Jesus at large events. They work on service projects. They put insulation under houses. They go on mission trips. He said, but unfortunately, what we're discovering in the long-term effects is youth ministry doesn't have the staying power of doing that. And he said, what we've concluded, Richard Ross wrote, Richard Ross, if you guys ever remember the movement, True Love Waits, that movement in student ministry, Richard Ross founded that. President of the Youth Ministry Institute at Southwestern Baptist Theological Seminary. Richard Ross said this. He said, we now have enough history to know that the majority of students who stay on mission for a lifetime are those from emotionally and spiritually vibrant homes. And so what they're concluding was this, is that the hype and the excitement and the programs and the activities and those kinds of things, while it may attract a crowd of students, it does not produce generational discipleship. Okay? The most single indicator that actually produces generational faithfulness is a spiritually vibrant home where the student ministry is partnering with the parents as opposed to a drop-off point, and we'll decide if your students will send them back changed. He said the 50-year data on that has been an abysmal failure in that. So I started reading that data several years ago, coming out being concerning, and then I began to take inventory of our own student ministries that I've been a part of as a pastor in doing some of those. So one of the concerns that I had was some of those statistics. And so about 4 or 5 years ago, we made a concentrated effort. I've got several pages of notes here. Yeah. So we made a concentrated effort. But at that point in time, we said, hey, the stats are coming out that the model that's been around for now almost 50 years at that point, it hasn't produced the kind of fruit that we hoped it would produce. And so you guys have heard that old leadership adage before. The definition of insanity is do the same thing over and over and expect different results. And so, just keep doing it. Just make it more exciting. Get a Pied Piper, get somebody in there the kids really love, and those kind of things, and that's the answer to that. Well, that's kind of the same model over and over. And so that model of student ministries that's been going on for 50 years, it's produced about an 80% dropout rate in generational faithfulness, has really been tied to two different strategies. One has been exciting or emotional programming. And so, have these huge events, this big attractional kind of service, and some emotional kind of things where it gets students stirred up, those kind of things. The other has been strategy predominantly been what we call a Pied Piper youth personality. Just a kid magnet, all the kids flock to them, and they're connected to them, and those kind of things. And so those have been the two primary ways that they've grown student ministries in attendance. Exciting events, exciting programming, sometimes even a little emotionalism, or a Pied Piper type of personality who's just a magnet, or sometimes the home run is if you had both. Okay? So let me give you a couple real case studies. This is not research outlet I read. This is real case studies here. So at one point in time, this would have been approximately 20 years ago, Liberty Heights Church had the largest student ministry in the state of Ohio. Literally in the whole state of Ohio. On any given week, there were between 300 and 400 students showing up between junior high and high school. Okay? They led the state in youth baptisms every single year during that time. Every single year. So by all accounts, you would say that's successful. And they had both exciting programs. They had their own night, their own worship band. They had their own location, actually, that was off-site. They had a Pied Piper kind of personality, a guy by the name of Eric Geiger. Okay? So most folks would say that was incredibly effective. We need to go back, and those are the keys to success in that. So about 8 or 9 years ago, Eric Geiger came back and was a guest speaker. I'd only been here a year or two. And he and I spent a lot of time talking. He's saying, Brad, if I could go back and rewind the clock, I would do just about everything different, exactly different than the way that we did it. And he said, what happened is this. We created an incredibly exciting program. He said, we had these high-energy kind of personalities that we really attracted around there. And he said, what happened is this. I'm going to write down what he said here. He said, we did a great job of connecting kids to our program and a terrible job connecting them to Jesus and His church. He said, parents loved it, though, because they didn't have to fight with their kids to go to church. He said, when I see those kids on social media, very few of them are pursuing a relationship with the Lord. And so what he said is, hey, they were committed to our program, but they weren't connected to Christ or His church. And so here's the argument I'm going to make theologically. If students aren't being connected to the local church, you're not making disciples. That's the New Testament plan for making disciples is through the local church in there. So that's case study number one. It happened here, the exciting programming model. Let me give you case study number two. So when I was at my previous church at Springboro Baptist, we averaged about 450 in average attendance on a weekend. So kind of a mid-sized church, 450. So normally a student ministry will average 10 to 15% of the total attendance of a church. That's been a benchmark now for 50 years. So if you've got a church of 1,000, you'd be averaging around 100 students, give or take, whatever the case is. So at that point in time, we were averaging 450, and our student ministry attendance was averaging between 100 and 115 every night. Okay? Huge student ministry attendance. One of those years, we did lead the state in youth baptism, so lots of baptisms, those kind of things. And so the student pastor at the time was, I don't know if you guys have heard of or not, Sean Akery was our student pastor. Okay, this is not a critique on Sean. Sean and I were still very close. We hung out yesterday, actually. This is Sean and I's conversations afterward. And he said, Brad, he said, if you would have told me at that time, or asked me, I would have told you the student ministry is incredibly successful. Look how many kids are coming, these baptisms. And he said, do you know what I discovered? He said, as soon as I left, so did all the kids. And so what was he saying? They were connected to a personality, a Pied Piper. If you've ever been around Sean, he has that personality that attracts the kids because he has the same maturity levels as those kids. So, again, he's one of my close friends, so I say that in love. But what was it? It was a Pied Piper mentality. Get this guy who's a youth magnet, and kids will flock, and they do. And guess what? As soon as he left, so do all the kids. And I asked him, I said, Do you ever track with those kids? And he said very, very, very few of them are serving the Lord anymore. Very few of them. So here's the problems with that model for the last 50 years. So you've got a model that says offer exciting programming, hire a Pied Piper, someone that hangs out with the kids and becomes their best friend. And so the problem with that is that's produced an 80% dropout rate. That's nationally over 50 years. And then a part of that as well, we've seen it here when the programming died out, so the kids, and then when the other one with Sean, when he left, so did all the kids as well. So that's part of the problem, not the solution in there. So we started to make some fundamental shifts. Now, here's the other part of the problem with that model. The average tenure of a youth pastor in North America over the last 50 years, the average over 50 years is 18 months. That's the national average over the last 50 years, is 18 months of student ministry. This week I had lunch with a student pastor, very good student pastor, like him a lot, very well respected. And he said at lunch, he said, I need some advice. And I said, well, I don't know if I have any, but I'm happy to listen. And I said, what's going on? He's like, I think I'm done with student ministry. He's in his third year. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, a couple things. He said, I can't, the parents want me to be every kid's best friend, and I can't attend every event they have, and I can't fix all the kids' problems. And he said, I just can't do it anymore. So there's a tremendous turnover. Now, some of that we thought, well, maybe that's because they're not getting paid enough. You know, student pastors don't always make a lot. So in the two student pastors we've had here, so Pastor Sean for 3 years, and then Pastor Nick for 2 years, we made sure, you can ask them this, they'll tell you this the truth, they both were the highest paid youth pastors in the entire area. Both of them. We made sure of that because we thought, hey, and so one lasted 3 years and one lasted 2 years in that. So we barely beat those averages in that. Now, who's hurt in that constant turnover? It's the students. It's the students. And so why is there so much turnover? Because let's just be honest. Student ministry for student pastors has been a stepping stone into grown-up ministry. Every student pastor I've been in ministry for 20 years. I've met one career youth pastor in 20 years. One. Okay? Every student pastor I know, when they grow up, that's what I tell them. So I tell Sean. They either want to become a lead pastor, an executive pastor, or a family ministries pastor. All of them. So when Pastor Sean left, what did he do? He went and planted a church. When Pastor Nick left, I said, what's your long-term goal? He said, I think this could put me in a place where I can become a family ministry pastor. That's what I want to do in there. Okay? So the turnover of that, so as a part of all of that, we began to make some shifts in our philosophy of student ministry, and then we thought it was a little bit unfair for the student pastors sometimes. What people want is they want someone who's crazy and fun and the kids relate to, but also we need you to be incredibly wise to handle their problems and be responsible with our kids and be organized. We have a saying around here, that's called a unicorn. Be lots of fun, but highly responsible. You know, be crazy with the kids, be very wise. You know your Bible, but, no pop culture. No. And then what do you do with the girls' ministry? Because you don't want the student guy connecting with the girls on a relational level. Well, if you were honest, what's happened in churches is his wife is the unofficial, free volunteer student female director in there. It's called a ministry that's called a twofer, right? You don't pay one, but you'd expect. So I'm just being honest about student ministry, and you've seen it, I've seen it for 20 years. That's played out in there. So from all of that, we just said something is broken in student ministry. Okay? 50 years of data, and it's abysmal. Our own case study here at Liberty Heights, our own case study at the church I came from, it's abysmal. And so let's start to make some adjustments. Let's not keep doing the same thing over and over in that. And so part of the challenge in that is that you have to get parents to focus on the long term. So the goal of student ministry is super simple. The goal of student ministry is long-term generational discipleship. You won't know the success of student ministry until probably 5 to 10 years after those kids are out of the student ministry. Okay, so that's the goal. So what are some adjustments we started to make at that point in time and have continued to make and want to continue in that direction? So a couple things that we made challenges, and you let me know when I'm out of time. You give me one of those. So in light of that, some of the changes we made several years ago on purpose, in light of all this data, we weren't going to keep doing the same thing over and over. We would intentionally connect them to the church as a whole by moving all programming off of Sunday morning so they could serve and participate in corporate worship with the body life of the church. With the goal being that when his kid left student ministry here, it would be odd to go somewhere and not actively be serving in your church. Okay? Why? Because that's what I've been doing in my own church for 4 years. All right? So we made that decision that they would participate in corporate worship. We would transition from the youth pastor being the primary point of relational contact, or youth director, to a small group leader being the primary point of relational contact. You know why? Because you know who stays over the long haul in the life of a student? It's the volunteers and the small group leaders. So if you ask my son, who's a freshman at Cedarville now, I said, who was the most influential student person in your life? He loved Pastor Nick. He loves Pastor Sean. He still hangs out with Pastor Sean sometimes. He would tell you this. He would say he said, I'm not sure there's a couple men. He said, but definitely one that had a huge impact, Dad, was Jeff Connor, who was one of my small group leaders. When he comes home, he and Jeff Connor have still had lunch when he comes home. Okay? So, Tashi been in student ministry for a long time. And so Tasha has tons of rapport with those kids, and all of our student, so we made that transition as well in that time, because student leaders usually stay over a long time, and a youth pastor is usually returning kind of a turnstile thing. We decided that we would restructure the staffing model, so the entire ministry did not center around one person or personality, but instead a team approach. So we put Shannon as the director of family ministries as a whole, kind of helping us set directional leadership for the student ministry and the family ministry as a whole, from birth all the way through students. So it's one cohesive strategy. We brought Mary Horvath on staff and said, hey, can you help us run events and use your administrative gifts and work in girls' discipleship? And then we've had an opening for the student ministry guys' discipleship that we've been going through resumes and working through that. We decided we would expand our counseling ministry to include biblical counseling being made available to students. So we're averaging right now about 100 counseling sessions a quarter through the counseling center. 100 a quarter. This year, if things pick up in the fourth quarter, we may hit 500 in 1 year. Okay? There is a fair percentage of those that are students going through there. Praise God. And I'm just telling you this. When I was 22 years old and started in full-time ministry, you didn't want to put your kid across from me with complex emotional and spiritual issues and have me pour out all of my 22 years of wisdom. Okay? I just wasn't equipped to do that as a 22, 23, 24-year-old fresh in ministry. So now we're putting with biblical counselors and seasoned people who are discipling them, and it's been wonderful, and we're connecting with parents, and some of their small group leaders have been going through that with them, connecting with them through that. It's been fantastic. It's going really, really well. We decided we would increase our efforts at equipping parents, and so we've had book clubs. We've been sending a lot more articles out, equipping those kind of things. And then we would also increase our efforts at equipping leaders by making available to them biblical counseling training. And so many of them have gone through that as well. And so this is a team approach in doing that. So let me give you, so what's been the fruit of that? So I've ran the traditional student ministry model now for a long time. And then this new model where it's been more of a team approach as opposed to one youth pastor. He does everything. Everybody loves him. He can do it all. He's great. He's mature. He's biblical. All the above. He can counsel. He can preach. He can whatever. So in that model, we've been running it for about 20 or 21 months in there. Okay? And so the current large group attendance in a pandemic is exactly double the size it's ever been. We had a full-time student pastor. Double. The amount of students participating in Bible study outside of that large group time is single-handedly the largest it's ever been in the middle of a pandemic. Okay? So I will tell you that when we had a full-time student pastor, and I'll just put real numbers out there to invest in that, full-time and stuff, we were paying benefits, retirement, all that stuff, $75,000, $80,000 to disciple about 30 to 35 students. That was their only full-time job. And so I told Sean one time, he'll tell you this day, we laugh about now. He didn't laugh then. I said, I'm pretty sure I could do your job part-time. Hanging out with kids for 35 students. And he said, you're probably true, but I need the full-time pay. So could we figure something else out? And so we began to work through that a little bit. So we got more students ever attending large group. We've got more students ever attending Bible study. We've got more students ever been involved. This is a huge stat to me. We had the largest group of college students participating in summer Bible study we ever had, ever. What did I tell you the effectiveness of student ministry is gauged by? When those kids graduate, are they still pursuing Jesus? We had the largest group of college students ever in our summer Bible study this past summer. Okay? We've had no turnover in leaders. no turnover in leaders. We've got a staff structure. So one of the questions we get about hiring a full-time student pastor. So let's just say that person creatively spent 40 hours a week doing student ministry. I don't know how you fill up your time, 40 hours, I used to tell Sean, but, so let's say 40 hours. So right now, between the time that Shannon's putting in and then the time that Mary's been putting in and then Seth's been providing a lot of leadership, so cumulatively, between the three, they're averaging somewhere around 45 to 50 hours a week into the student ministry, which is greater than any one individual youth pastor could ever put in that time, or we would want him to put in that time to do that. Okay? So, let me tell you this. As a pastor, I'm thrilled with the student ministry where it's at. When I look at the fruit of what's happening, could not be any better. Okay? So, when all those things are covered, fruit's being played out, some of the challenges of student ministry being eradicated, I think, through the strategy that we've had now in place for 20, 21 months, when I've had conversations with people, they said, we still need a full-time youth pastor, that's all they do. And I said, we've had that. And it didn't produce what you wanted to produce. And I said, for 50 years, it hasn't produced what you wanted to produce. I said, I think a team model is a better model. And I just said, well, I don't know. And I said, well, just be honest with me. What do you want? I just think someone can hang out with the kids all the time. That's not the answer to long-term generational discipleship. Because as soon as that person is gone, so will those kids be gone, if that's the connection point. The connection point needs to be to Jesus Christ and His church, not to an individual personality, and a team of people discipling them in that model. Okay? So as a pastor, in the middle of a pandemic, the student ministry is the largest and the strongest it's ever been in this team model. And as a parent, I'm the most pleased what I've ever been. And again, I love Pastor Nick. I love Pastor Sean. It's not a critique on them. It's a testimony to the model that we've put together over the last 20 to 21 months. Okay? So towards that end, what we've decided to do in staffing the student role is we're going to keep the leadership we have in place. All right? And here's what I mean by that. So Mary's been serving for a girls' discipleship leader now for 20 months, roughly in there. Shannon's been leading our whole family ministries team for 20 months. And then Seth has been leading our guys in overall coordination for the last 20 months. And so we've invited Seth to come on staff and serve in that director of guys' discipleship in that role. And so we're thrilled to continue that team model and have him pour into them. So if you ask me, I said, hey, you got a boy who's 18, 19 years old, would you be pleased if Seth was going to be the one discipling him in that model? I couldn't be more thrilled because I've watched him do it for a long time. Now the question sometimes people said, well, what about the teaching? Those things, so Seth does have a degree from a Christian college. And so one of the other things we've done is that we think it's important to connect students to the local church, to the big church as a whole, that our actual staff pastors should be in here teaching on a regular basis. That we're investing in our students. We all have seminary degrees. We're investing in our students. We're pouring into them. They just don't see us up on the stage on Sunday morning. We're here teaching. So all of our pastors have been teaching back here, me included, and we're going to continue to teach back here in a rotation with Seth. So we think a team approach of student ministry is exponentially greater than a single standalone wonder youth pastor who's going to be here 18 months, and the fruit of it has been exponentially greater in the midst of a pandemic. And so there's an old saying in leadership, and I don't know if this is proper grammar or not, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Okay? So the people investing in our students for a long time now, we want them to keep doing that in that team model, all right, to do that. So Seth's going to come and share a little bit. Am I good on my time? Yep. Okay. So Seth's going to come a little bit and kind of share his heart and experience in student ministry. You have a handheld in doing that. So I'm thrilled and excited in that. And let me just tell you this. We have 28 people on staff at Liberty Heights Church across all campuses. 28 people on staff. 25 out of 28 have been internal hires. 25 out of 28. In my 11 and a half years that I've been here, we've had 2 staff members that did not stay on staff long term. 2 out of 28. Both of them were external hires. So when we hire someone internally, we've got to see their character, we've got to see their competency, we've got to see their chemistry with other leaders, we've got to hear their convictions, all while they weren't getting paid. And so I think a strong church is one that disciples leaders and raises up leaders and deploys them into ministry. That's called New Testament Christianity in doing that. So I don't want you to think we're making an internal hire. We're settling. Went through over 200 resumes, literally, for 21 months, over 200 resumes. And we thought the absolute best resume and leader we could find was Seth Horvath. All right? So, Seth, would you come and share a little bit?
Thanks, Brad. That's super generous. So thank you. First of all, I just want to do basic introduction. So my name's Seth Horvath. I think you guys have heard that. My wife, Mary, is down here in the front row. And we have 3 daughters together. Alyssa is a sophomore. She's 19 years old. She is at Liberty University in the nursing program. It feels really weird to stand up here because every Sunday night I'm down there walking around. So I know we're being taped, so I won't jump down. Ellie is 18 years old, and she is a freshman at Liberty University. And Riley is 16, and she is a junior in Mason High School. And so we moved here from Louisville, Kentucky. It was 9 years ago, which seems like yesterday. And after visiting a few local churches, we ended up here. And we've been here for 7 years. And I think Alyssa was in 6th grade when we first came here. And I remember we met Sean Akery on day 1. We dropped our kids off, and he was larger than life. And we met him, and immediately we began serving alongside of him. He just drew you in. And so student ministry has been our life really for the last 20 years. Mary and I were in student ministry before we were married. And so when we were dating and we were engaged, that was one of the things that we loved doing together. And so my heart for students as our daughters have grown and now as they're in college has only gotten deeper. It's an incredible passion of mine. And a lot of people go, well, student ministry is a hard place to be. And I'm like, that's where I want to be. That's where Mary wants to be. And it's really where our heart is. And I'll tell you why. We saw our girls go through these transitions, and it is the student that hurts when the student pastor moves on. They get so attached to that personality, and then we have to come through we're there to clean up the pieces when the youth pastor leaves and another one comes in and we get to know them. And for some of them, it was their senior year. For some, it was their junior year. And then in the past transition, I think we were averaging probably 30 people on Sundays, 30 students. And so our passion, Mary and my passion, is biblical community, whether it be in the adult life group that we lead or whether it is with our students. And so one of the things that I saw in our girls' life show up so much was a lack of the ability to have biblical community. And in life group, when I talk to students that are here tonight, your kids, one of the biggest things is, tell me about your friend group. Where are you hanging out the most? And it's sports, it's school, and now it's here with the 70 to 100 kids that come here and want to learn about Jesus. And that is what really gets me excited. Okay, and so a couple of things. I think we made a couple of changes right away during the pandemic. And one of those is this: when in the absence of a student pastor, there's no curriculum. And so I think one of the things that we were like, well, we can't invent things. I can't invent a new curriculum every Sunday night or a program to go through, because those programs are just aimed at let's, I don't want to say this in a bad way, let's dumb down the gospel so your students can understand it. Well, I have news for you. We learned very quickly that you have a lot of smart students that live with you. Very, very smart. And so we chose to go sermon discussion route. The exact same sermon discussion that we have in our adult life groups. Does it look exactly the same? No. Is the application exactly the same? No. But that is what our life groups are for on Sunday nights. And I really want to emphasize that. That's where we are leaning in the most. Because our students sit in the large gathering and listen to our pastors teach, just like we do. We hopefully are having those discussions over lunch, on the way home in the car, and then when they come here, we're diving in on certain topics that they want to talk about. And so we ask questions, and the students ask questions, and we have amazing discussions. And what I saw in my 9th, 10th, and 11th, and 12th grade boys, as we started doing that, the discussions got much deeper. They got honest. They got authentic, a little uncomfortable. And I love that. That's my wheelhouse. I love it when we can just peel back the onion and say, where are we at, and where do we need to go from here? The best part about that is you're learning the same thing right alongside your student. That's the best part of that. And so when we talk about student discipleship, that's where we're going to be at, and I'm not going to change it. And that's why I love this rotation. First of all, I work at Target, and so I have a rotating schedule, and I am very busy. The best part I think about this is that I have 2 daughters that are now in college, and we have this void, and I have time. And so when Shannon said, hey, are you able, is this something that you would be willing to do? I was like, I've been waiting for this opportunity because God has just put this desire in my heart. And so just know I'm putting everything into this, and I'm super, super excited. And so thank you for the opportunity. One of the things I want to do really quick, if you're a life group leader for us, would you stand up really quickly? If you're a life group leader in student ministries, just stand up. So I could not take this opportunity without this group. Okay, you can come on up. I'm sorry, Mary's back here. This group, the guys that I've been serving alongside, I'm a life group leader as well, but they have grown and I have grown so close because when you serve together, that's an amazing thing to do. But as this group of students has grown, it's gotten so fun. And we've grown very close as a team. And so I only look forward to that. The last thing I want to say is this, and that's that I think there has been a gap in student ministries. Just like Brad said, he didn't mention it, but the biggest gap that we have had has been equipping parents to be great parents. I remember as a young dad, I don't know why this happened in junior high. We were talking about this on the way over here. And I remember Alyssa and Ellie told me a story about something that happened at school. And I was like, you have a separate life outside of our home that I know little to nothing about. And for the first time, this thought was in the back of my head. What are you being taught? What are you hearing? What are you seeing at school? Now, I was homeschooled my entire life. And so our girls were in Christian school, and then they were in public school. And so we've experienced it all types of school. What I learned is that there is a lot of external pressure on our students. And at some time, it meets with that sin nature that they naturally have. We all do. And there is a clash right there in the middle. And that's where student ministry and parenting comes in. Those very, very difficult moments where our students have questions, where they hear something and they need an explanation. I want you to know that there's nothing that excites me more than having a difficult conversation with a parent and a student and walking through that together and seeing them come on out the other end, sanctifying themselves and becoming more like Christ. That is where I think student ministries comes alongside parents and helps. And so expect things in the near future. I don't have dates or anything for you, but I would love to do small forums, whether it be parenting in a digital age, because that is scary, and parenting teenagers. We have them if we're in this room, and so that's an exciting time, but it's also a scary time. I don't subscribe that teenagers are crazy. People told us, oh, wait for the teenage years, and they were the best years, and they still are. And so thank you for the opportunity. We love your students. Mary and I do. It's my favorite time to come here and serve on Sunday nights, and I can't tell you how excited I am. Mary's the event coordinator. We have some really cool events coming up. Just to let you know, I wanted to really shed some light on that. Get your students involved. These are really fun things, and this is what we talk about when we talk about the biblical community. So she did hurt her back, so I'm going to let her stand down here.
All right, so mainly, he probably wants me to say this because usually he's up here and I'm like, he'll tell the dates and I'll be like, no, it's this day. So I have them all memorized. So anyway, again, my name is Mary Horvath. Our next event is Sunday. It is the Friendsgiving, and we had just a few students sign up, and now we have a lot of students. So we are super excited for Sunday Friendsgiving. It's at the Mason campus. If this is the first time you are hearing about it, then let us know right away if you want your student to attend. So it is at the Mason campus on Sunday evening. All right. And then we will have our Christmas party December 5th. And some of our students in here have been to the Christmas party before. If you have not, it is our formal event. No, the kids get dressed up. It's a nice time for pictures. It's a lot of fun. We enjoy our Christmas party. We missed it so much last year. So our Christmas party will be December 5th. We are going to have a winter retreat this year. So woohoo. We're so excited. Though that is in the process of still being planned, because we still have quite a bit of states canceling on us. So, but we are planning, we will do something, and that is going to be February 18th through 20th. And everybody has school off, I'm pretty sure. So we looked at we have like 18 schools represented here, which is amazing. So I think everybody's school calendar fits with that. And then a huge thing, and by the way, there's many different events through all those dates, but these are the big ones. Camp, so crossings again, it'll be June 13th through 17th, okay? So mark that now, June 13th through 17th. That is the highlight of the year. So many great relationships are made. That's right when we started the Bible study over the summer. So since it's in June this year, we can start that quicker. And then, as usual, lhcstuman.com/calendar. We'll have the full Google Calendar. We will always be updating that. So make sure you subscribe to that. If you don't know how to do that, one of us can help you subscribe to that calendar.
Pastor Brad just waved at me like, give me the mic, so I'll give him the mic. Thanks, guys.
Well, hey, I'm just going to wrap us up in a quick word of prayer, and I'll stick around afterwards if you have questions. There's snacks over there. You can hang out, eat snacks and cookies. And again, I'll stay around here at the front. If you got questions, I'm happy to stay after and chat and those kind of things. So, well, let's pray and thank God for this exciting continued chapter. I want to say new chapter, continued chapter of God's faithfulness in the life of the student ministry. So let's pray together. God, we're so thankful, the privilege of serving you here at your church at Liberty Heights. And I just pray, Lord, that you would find us to be faithful stewards over the ministry that you've entrusted us with. God, I'm grateful for the leaders that you've raised up, not just Seth and Mary and Shannon, but all of our group leaders and the critical role they play in pouring into our students in this. God, I'm grateful for the fruit we've seen over the last 20-plus months. In the middle of a pandemic, I'm blown away at your work in our student ministry. I'm grateful to God that our students can experience them. But Lord, we pray and ask and believe for even more fruit, more discipleship, more opportunities to share Jesus with students. And we're so thankful that we get to pour into these students' life in an incredibly crucial time. So bless our efforts. May we glorify you with our attitudes, actions, and activities. And we pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.